welcome to Chicago Noir. I'm your host, Darius Hillman. Each month, we proudly showcase and amplify the African American experience right here in the Windy City. This month, we'll spend time with some of Chicago's leading ladies, 3 indomitable women, 3 powerful conversations where servant leadership and the power of faith serve as crystal clear through lines. Later, we'll sit in conversation and community with Dr. Dominica McBride, the founder and CEO of the Become Center, and Chicago United President and CEO Tiffany Hamel Johnson. But first, Leadership Greater Chicago's Chief Executive Officer, Myetie Hamilton, is the first Black woman to lead the venerable Civic Leadership Development Organization, bringing more than 25 years of demonstrable experience leading innovative change to the table. Myetie is on a mission to help develop Chicago leaders who do well and do good.
My grandfather always, instilled in me to give 150% and to do it when no one's looking.
Come on.
So it's not about how you're showing up when people are looking, but your ethic speaks to how you show up when no one's looking.
There are through lines that help to really underpin what we see in your leadership today.
Yes.
So I'd like to go back to the beginning, the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You were born, you're a Chicago native.
Yes.
You were born to a teen mom.
Yes.
And your grandparents played a key role as being a part of your mom's support team.
I grew up on the South Side in South Shore. And so my mom, 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
My mom is African American and my father is Lebanese. So I identify as a Black woman, but I fully embrace both cultures, my Lebanese culture as well as my Black culture. I didn't meet my dad until much later in life, so when I was about 30 years old. So my mom, it's like we grew up together. But it taught me a lot, just seeing the resiliency that she modeled, the perseverance, and it inspired me to never take no for an answer. I mean, literally, no for me is just means not right now, right? That's how I take it. My grandparents were very influential in my life, and so as you can imagine, with my mom being so young, my grandparents played a critical role in helping to raise me. I had access to a lot of experiences, by way of my grandfather. And I'll never forget when I graduated college, my grandfather told my grandmother to go and buy me a wardrobe. And so I had suits to wear. So I started my first job at CPS. First generation college in my family. I graduated from Alabama A&M University, proud HBCU graduate. And my first role at Chicago Public Schools was in finance. And I remember wearing suits every day.
Not 5 years after graduating from CPS, you returned fabulously dressed, thanks to your grandparents, okay, to begin a career there.
Yeah.
And you touched on it. Where did you begin? Talk about your role in finance, and where did you end, 21 years later?
So actually 18 years I served at CPS. When I started working in the Department of Finance, my observation probably should have been on all things financial. But as a 22-year-old, it wasn't. It was on the culture of CPS. It was on how I observed that we were showing up as holding schools and principals accountable, but not with support, not with equitable access. My career quickly pivoted into creating systems and structures that would dismantle bureaucracy, create shared services that were more equitable for principals. I would say my entire career is just a reflection of focusing on who are we here to serve.
And you know what's interesting, Myetie? When you say it, it resonates so deeply. but it's so much like common sense that feels far less common than it needs to be. I'm just going to cover some things, a few things. Executive Director City Year. I remember your tenure there, very successful. President of the Chicago Parks District. Clearly there is a through line here. There's a through line here, and you've talked about it. It's demonstrable, and it is a through line of service to others. You were, speaking of themes, you were a Leadership Greater Chicago Fellow in 2016, and you came, you saw, you went, this feels, I like what we're doing here, I like what it's done for me. And July 2023, just over a year ago, you became the CEO of Leadership Greater Chicago. Tell me what brought you to LGC as a fellow, and tell me what 7 years later brought you back as its leader, leading it into its next 40 years.
Wow. Totally not planned. I'll start there.
Let's start there.
I was a deputy network chief at the time. So I co-led 28 schools in Bronzeville, Woodlawn, and Hyde Park. And in joining LGC and just what it meant to me, the opportunity to explore the city. See, sometimes we feel like when we're from Chicago that we know, I'm from the community, I know everything that there is to know. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So corporate, philanthropic, education, government, right? Nonprofit, folks that I may not have otherwise spent as much time with. What I went in knowing was the importance of that cross-sector collaboration to get things done in this city, right? To do good, to do transformational work. And that is still true today. And the understanding of when we connect, we may be different and we may have differences, but we are all connected through our humanity. So we have the Signature Fellowship, then we have the Burnham Fellowship that was established in 2019 as an accelerator for C-suite level leaders, right? Executives that can move with a level of urgency to address, in particular, economic development in our most under-resourced communities, as well as workforce development and workforce preparedness. Dr. Janice Jackson is an LGC Fellow. Pedro Martinez is an LGC Fellow. Andrea Science is an LGC Fellow. So the list goes on and on. And I think that our mission is to continue building that pipeline.
You have twin daughters, 17, starting to think about college, living their life. What is your, now take off the leader who was just recently named one of the 2024 Crane Chicago Business Notable Black Leaders, well deserved, but take that, or maybe keep it on. Two-part question. What is your greatest hope and greatest fear for your twin girls?
Now, that's a really good question. My greatest hope for them, so where I will begin is that they are my greatest inspiration. I draw from them and they make me better. Just really, they are like really good humans. Brilliant. So my greatest hope for them, I think as parents, what we always hope is to position them to experience more than we did. My greatest hope for them is to tap into their passion, right, through this exploration, and to live in their purpose, And for me, that is also tied to my hope for them is to find their own, relationship with God.
I can say this, and I hope you will receive it and the Spirit is given. you are where you are supposed to be, it feels like to me. Wherever you are is where you're supposed to be, but leading this organization is in terribly good hands. So such a pleasure, Myetie. Thank you for taking time with us.
Thank you, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm Ricky Watson, and I'm inviting you to join me for the new CAN TV original program, Critical Conversations. Each month, I'll share space with special guests who, like you and me, are on their journey of self-discovery and deeper understanding. Join the conversation on CAN TV, cable channel 19, or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
Driven by a deep passion to create social justice and realize the potential of thriving communities, Dr. Dominica McBride founded the Become Center. With her growing team, Dr. McBride works to shift mindsets, build skills, see and use the strengths that are already within communities that create movement towards the ideal. Her work, propelled by evaluation and best practice, Dominica is leading from the heart.
Part of what people have discovered, what these women have discovered, is in their own healing journey and tapping into their own self-love and their own authenticity, they were able to bring that out of other people.
In 2013, you founded Become Center. What pushed you into this must happen and this must happen now?
It's been growing since I was a child. I grew up in this small rural town, one of a handful of kids of color in the town. And
was this in Michigan?
This is in Michigan,
okay.
Yeah, rural Michigan. And experienced just blatant racism throughout my childhood. But at the same time, on the flip side, I experienced a strong, socially cohesive neighborhood. So it just depended on where I was in the town. And so I got to experience both the positive and the negative aspects of community. And I also wanted to be part of the healing that we need in this society. I wanted to be part of our community's healing. I wanted to be part of societal healing. And ever since have been collecting all these different tools for healing on different levels, whether it's healing one-on-one or healing families, or it's healing on a community level. In 2013, actually at the end of 2012, I was in a hard spot. I had to figure out what I was going to do, what direction. I was sitting on 79th and Racine in BJ's with two other women, and we were talking about programming, and we were talking about Chicago, and we were talking about change, and all of a sudden I just heard this whisper in my mind, become. And I said, oh, it's time.
It's time.
It's time. So that night I went and I wrote the manifesto, and I came up with the logo, submitted paperwork, and January 4th, 2013, it was
When it's
done.
time, it's time. Become is now more than a decade into its life.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know who Become is, we're a nonprofit.
What is the mission of Become Center?
So in a nutshell, our work is at the intersection of social science research and community activism to help our communities to heal and create the change that we want to see. So we work with people and organizations to spark that power that's already within and the cultural strengths and the knowledge and the brilliance that's already within people, and help to wield it together to create solutions and strategies, and then use tools of culturally responsive evaluation and research and training and capacity building to really uplift those solutions, to evaluate the solutions, and to ensure the success.
What's the philosophy at Become?
Culturally responsive practice. Okay. So it's not enough to just do evaluation or to just do research or to just do trade. Like, it has to be culturally responsive, to value people's culture, to attend to it, to learn and to adjust and to be humble and to work with people.
I'm going to read something to you, staying on this line of thought. You tell me if this sounds familiar. Community must be at the heart of identifying their capabilities and address their challenges and to create their desired reality. Why does this matter so much? Because you hear so often people with great intention coming into communities that they know through news stories or a tour, and they come in with great ideas, energy, passion, and time again, it's unsuccessful.
That was one of the other key pieces of why I wanted to start Become. What's missing a lot of times is that they're not talking to the people that live in the community. They're not listening to the people that live in the community.
Trusting
and
in the people.
Trusting, right.
Respecting and
trust is big.
honoring.
Respect, honor, trust, all of that. And community, like people, there's so much wisdom and brilliance and experience and talent. Why aren't we starting there and building with? And so that was a big part of the heart of why I said, okay, we should start this, like, you know, to build with people.
Tell us about becoming change makers. This book you wrote and helped curate, and there are 13 women of color who participated in this.
Yes.
It was honestly a humbling experience to be asked to be an author in the Becoming Changemakers book for Become. My chapter is chapter 4 on healing, and it was really a very emotional, tumultuous time in the sense of I really had to go back and tell a story of my humble beginnings with Become and finding out the diagnosis of my daughter for brain tumor. And I was maybe about 3 months in at working with Become as a contractor at the time, and lo and behold, my daughter got hospitalized. We were in the hospital for 2 months, and one things that kept me sane, grounded, and full of still purpose was working at Become.
The whole purpose is to find wellness in not only yourself, but in others, right? Everything is context, right? So life is not black nor white, but there's a lot of gray there. And so I believe this book is helping others to figure out the gray, right? What happens when? Everyone's story is unique, whether or not you're the same race, ethnicity, we are not a homogenous group. So it's very important that we have more voices that actually tap into, you know, folks' why and their journey, you know, and how they can move to the next level and help others move to the next level.
Talk about this.
Yes.
And what this is, how this came to be, and what this, within these pages, is designed to do or accomplish or help to accomplish.
That came to be from talking to women of color across different disciplines about their experience in leadership and growth. We were working on several projects. We saw that across these 3 projects, there were some major themes that it didn't matter if they were in philanthropy or nonprofit or organizing or advocacy. Women were facing certain challenges, and they were experiencing growth in certain ways that were connected to like their own becoming, you know, of themselves as people, of themselves as leaders. And we're like, wow, there's these 4 big lessons learned, and we're like, this is significant.
You talked about being able to see both the strengths and the challenges of community in your own home. Which side was it more? The strength or the challenge?
That was both. And so it was very interesting. There's a lot of like, you know, spiritual exploration in the home, political exploration in the home, you know, so my mind was very open in so many ways because of the different views and also the different cultural influences in the home, from my mom being first generation Haitian, here my dad having like Polish and French Canadian. So it made me very passionate about what I believed in.
The work you are doing is important and transformational. Have a great event tonight. I know how events can be, that you are sitting here calm.
Oh, this has been great, Darius. Thank you so much for doing this.
CAN TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN TV On Demand.
In April 2020, at the very height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Tiffany Hamel Johnson began her tenure as president and CEO of Chicago United, making her the first Black woman to hold the role in the organization's 56-year history. While many might have found the challenge unbearably daunting, Tiffany planted her feet firmly, straightened her shoulders, and tapped into the skills that were first instilled in her by her parents, leading the organization through the storm. A Chicagoan through and through, Tiffany Hamel Johnson is the embodiment of the mantra, "Unto whom much is given, much is required."
I came up in a very close family. My family, my parents were very, comfortable. You know what I mean? I didn't struggle in the way some people did. I aspired to be, something great. I'm inspired to make a difference. I'm inspired to, if not me, then who?
Paint a picture for us, your formative years in this city and how it has impacted who you are today sitting here.
Probably a unique story to some people. Born and raised here. Formative years were in this community where we are. I'm, Lakeshore, around Gold Coast, Streeterville. I grew up for the first 14, 15 years of my life. So I'm a Northsider true and true. I'm a public school kid. I went to Ogden Grammar School. I went to Lincoln Park High School. Multiracial, diverse socioeconomic, kids from across the city. It was like one of the first magnet schools. So we were one of a handful of black families in the area. And my parents moved me there and moved my family there because of the opportunities around education.
It was intentional.
Right, it was intentional. And even though it was public school, again, I grew up in Gold Coast, and so this public school had so many resources, and that's why they planted us there.
Speaking of family, you and your family are especially close. And it's profoundly important to you in that, because I think it's another thing that centers who you are. Mm-hmm. Talk about what those bonds mean to you and how they buoy you and protect you in times of challenge.
Having a grandmother who, there's a whole story around that, she was an entrepreneur, mm-hmm. and then instilling that with my mom. My dad worked for Alberto Culver. My mom raised 3 of us. She had her own business. From a very early age, there was an instilling of you can be and you can do whatever you want to be. And that came from my grandmother. That came from my mother. That came from my father. Like, I could be. So I never took that for granted, if that makes sense.
You didn't assume otherwise.
I didn't assume otherwise. I focused on I had to be better than the best, right? And I represented my family. And there was an expectation that they had for me to succeed. And also being the person that's in that door, but making sure that, from that I'm bringing up people along.
If you are the first, you are not the only.
Right, the last. And that came from my grandmother and my parents, my mom, and, just doing what they did. And so watching my father too, being the one and the only in this huge industry and being a trailblazer, watching my mom doing what she did with real estate, or she opened salons. I just had an example of these people in my family that I could be what I could see.
So I want to talk about your mission here, and I'm going to read it because I want to make sure I get it correctly. Chicago United's mission is to achieve parity and economic opportunity for people of color by advancing multiracial leadership in corporate governance, expanding the talent pipeline for executive level management, and growing minority businesses. It's going to sound like a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway for those in the cheap seats. Why does that matter so much now more than ever?
I think when you're talking about building wealth in communities, like if you condense it down, right? Because that's a lot, and we have been doing it in different iterations for 56 years. For me, that going back to that, and I have to take people back to that. When you're talking about the middle class or the low middle class and ways that people can build wealth, having a job, connecting into corporate America, people that are going, getting college degrees, or those that are not, that want to have a seat at the table, right, across these sectors that help build wealth, in these different, in corporate America, but in these different sectors. At that time, too, us with affirmative action, with things that are happening where we weren't even able to get in the door,
yeah.
and we are still, there's still issues,
Here we are,
right?
yes.
This place for me, the North Star is around creating economic opportunity and building wealth.
Yeah.
For these communities that have been left out. And if they want to do it in corporate America, then we should be able to provide the pipelines, the resources, the access.
And diversity, we know this. You and I know this. We've worked on reports about this. It's not just a nice thing. It impacts your bottom line.
Well, yeah, and here's my father worked in corporate America. My father was difficult and was the only, but my father did really well, right? That built
And
that
brought something that no one else could.
Right, and it built well for our family.
Yeah.
For us to be able to live where we live,
Yeah.
or travel where we travel, or have the education that we have. My parents, right, both, when I say that.
Yeah.
So that, as a person, I bring my personal experience to this.
Absolutely.
When I took this job, I said, I am not a DEI expert. I did not go to school for DEI.
Sure.
I am a black woman that has navigated corporate America.
I am the walking case study.
You know what I mean?
So
and the difference is too, I have had access and opportunity. Not saying it was always easy, but I have, what can I bring to this space that expands it for other people?
Yeah. So DEI initiatives, and there was a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, that I think 2 or 3 companies literally publicly went, yeah, we're going to stop. An organization like Chicago United that you lead, how do you continue, how do you shift, how do you remind, but how do you continue to do what we all know is absolutely core work in an environment that has changed significantly since the Supreme Court's decision?
So, this isn't the first time DEI has been under attack, right, in the 56 years of this organization, and the organization is still standing.
Come on.
And so what I have said to our members, to our board, is we have to be the light. We have to be the light. And we can't, while companies are going through so many different things, we have to be the organization that is not, as you would say, our backs are straight, right? How do you say it, Darius?
Flat-footed and yes.
Yeah, and I am so serious about that, because if not us, who?
I met a young man, Miles, who was a smart, precocious, we're in this togetherness of you, Derek, and your son, and that he gets to see that partnership. It has been amazing to watch. It really is. Here's my final question for you. You ready? It's a 2-parter.
I don't know.
Okay. I need you to be ready.
Oh, God.
What is your greatest hope for Miles and your greatest fear?
My greatest hope for Miles is that he continues to understand that there's nothing that he can't do, and that he's resilient, and that that's more than one hope. But
go for it.
And as a black boy being raised, he has had opportunities, and he is very aware, as you know that, he is very aware, and that there is a God that is watching over him, and that has ordered his steps. And when there is fear and there's hopelessness, which does come, that he understands that there is someone higher than him that's directing that path, and he taps into that. When I leave here, when my husband leaves here, as an only child, I want him to know that.
Thank you, Myetie, Dominica, and Tiffany, for sharing your incredible journeys. And thanks to each of you for joining us for Chicago Noir. We'll be back right here next month with 3 more Chicago-centered stories that amplify the rich and varied African-American experience here in the city of Big Shoulders. Until then, take good care of you and each other.